Welcome to the March 21st meeting of the West Clermont Local School District School Board. Mr. Romano, could you please take roll?
Yes, Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
Present.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Present.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
All present?
Thank you. We do not need executive session at this time, so we'll go to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Okay, Mrs. Delaney, in a second.
Second.
Mr. Chumley, any discussion? Okay, Mr. Romano?
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, recognition?
Well, tonight we are blessed to be able to recognize Lily Workman. So Lily, you can stay right there and I'll hear a few things and I'll have you come up and shake our hands. Lily is an 8th grader at West Clermont Middle School, and she was selected as the Youth of the Year for the Jeff Weiler Boys and Girls Club in Clermont County. To achieve the title of Youth of the Year, on any level, club members must embody the values of leadership and service, academic excellence, and healthy lifestyles. And they have to exemplify the critical impact that Boys and Girls Clubs have on the lives of young people. And by being awarded the Youth of the Year, she was also invited to speak at the Youth of the Year event for Cincinnati Boys and Girls Club in February. And I attended that event. It ended up being held virtually because of the Omicron. And Lily, you were absolutely amazing when you stood in front of all those people to present. I remember from your speech that you talked about just the importance of having a sense of belonging in school and your interest in music in the future at NKU. Did I remember that right? Yes. And she had a strong message of the importance of focusing on mental health in schools. I just thought you were so inspirational and so brave, and you just seemed so mature for an 8th grader. So it was such a pleasure to be able to witness you speak in front of everybody. So if you want to come on up, we will recognize you tonight as the Jeff Weiler Boys and Girls Club Student of the Year. We can all give her a big round of applause. Lily is here this evening with her parents, so Mr. and Mrs. Workman, if you want to stand up and be recognized, because okay. And what was so awesome really is hearing an 8th grader talk about the love of learning. Will you want to stay here for a picture? Not really, I know. These people are so proud of you. To hear an 8th grader talk about the love of learning with such passion, you can tell that she has a great family, great parents, great teachers who invest in her. And Lily, we just wish you the best as you go on to West Clermont High School. That's your principal sitting right in front of you. You can say hi, Mr. Gephardt. And just best of luck as you pursue your dream and career with music at NKU. So again, thank you for representing West Clermont so well and for being so brave. We have some more, yes.
Okay.
But let's see who's coming up first. Is it Chuck first or
Yes.
Mr. LaFada? You've got an interesting crew sitting behind you
Got a
tonight.
great crew. First of all, thank you for recognizing these men and women. There's a lot more than this that couldn't be here, of course, tonight. But in my short time being in charge of this department, I got to say they're the best that I've ever worked with, bar none. They've had challenging years with COVID, and then this year in particular with lack of employees, lack of subs, people walking out, subs leaving. And the one thing that all of those people do is they pitch in and they make it work for the district. No complaining at all. They're very professional. And I think overriding thing that has bonded me to them is they are beyond passionate about what they do. So some buildings may not be up to par with what we think they should be, but it could be because that building is dealing with maybe one custodian. There's two short because of illness or injury or whatever. So these people are fantastic. I appreciate you recognizing them. It's well-deserved in my opinion. And again, my hat's off to you. I respect you more than you know.
We've committed to celebrating teams around West Clermont and making sure that teams are recognized as just showing the sense of like all of us coming together. And there's no better group to start with than you guys and how you work together.
I agree. We're top shelf. So we got to stand to be recognized.
We can just always count on you, and you forgot to mention the ice that they had to wrestle with this year. That was definitely a highlight. Yeah, they deliver every time, and we are just so grateful for you, and so grateful that you would come tonight to be a part of this board meeting. I know you have lots of things that you can do, and we just don't think we celebrate enough around here, and know that you deserve so much more than a round of applause. But just again, thank you. We're grateful for you and what you do here in West Clermont. And Mr. Newell.
Good evening. I have the pleasure tonight to honor a group of people that I would say exude empathy. And they exude empathy even in the face of intense emotion and conflict surrounding contact tracing, COVID, and the efforts that we've engaged in as a community to help prevent the spread of that virus through our community. So I'd like a few people to stand up or come on up to be recognized who are here tonight. Amy Barker, who's served as one of our contact tracers. Come on up, Amy. Amy Huss, who also assisted on our contact tracing team. Heidi Sandlin, our district supervising nurse. Shannon Farnbach, our district health aide. And then a few people who weren't able to be here tonight, Leslie Combs from our central office, Crystal Cooper, who worked tirelessly last year and prior as a contact tracer for the district, Kathy Stemmer, who also assisted with our contact tracing team, and then a number of individuals within our schools. So just, I have been so proud to see the passion that you give not only to doing your job extremely diligently, but then the emotion that you put into listening to families, listening to staff, being able to help them through those difficult situations. And I just want to say thank you.
It is so great to be able to put a face with all the contact tracers because you have this title, this new thing, this new job that nobody even knew of two and a half years ago, and has been critical to us being able to be successful, to keep our staff and our students as healthy as possible. And I know you got some phone calls that weren't so nice, that you got beat up a lot, and you were on the front lines. And it's a lot. And because of the passion that Eric was talking about that you bring and your care and concern for others, you persevered through that. And I just don't think we can say thank you enough for the crazy that you've been involved in and the level of details that you've had to pay attention to. It's mind-blowing to think about really what you've spent your hours and hours and hours doing, like your ear probably burning being on the phone. And we just want to thank you, and we're just so grateful that we're moving out of this phase, and you'll have new things to entertain yourself with, because I'm sure we'll come up with something, right? But thank you again for being a great team and supporting all the administrators in this heavy, heavy lift that our district has had to take on, so thank you. Did you get a picture of the guys in the back? Okay.
See if there's any cards out there.
Okay. I think Jeffrey was back there working.
It's okay to smile, guys. You can smile.
Item 6.01, public commentary. Excuse me, do we have any cards, Mr.
There are no requests.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda.
Dr. Probst will start with personnel.
Good evening, members of the board. Mrs. Adams, Mr. Romano. In front of you is the personnel agenda for March 21st, 2022. On the agenda today, we have 5 retirements. Joseph Shue is a special ed teacher at Clough. He's been with us for 26 years. Vivian Hale is the child nutrition field supervisor. She's been with us for 26 years. Susan Grisel, a special ed teacher at the high school, has been with us for 15 years. Susan Fraley, a para at the high school, for 13 years. And Thomas Jutzy, a PE teacher at the high school for 23 years and has also been part of our varsity boys basketball team. We also have multiple resignations. I did want to point out 2. That was Victoria Reinhardt, who's been with the treasurer's office for over 9 years, and Thomas Cummins, who was a special ed teacher at the high school for the last 18 years, so they're resigning as well. We also have the proposed hiring of 2 school psychologists, a special education coach, special education teacher, custodian, and paraprofessional aide. On the agenda is the proposed transfer and reassignment of 2 administrators. Tyler Lucas is our supervisor of special education. His focus has been on preschool. He'll be moving to fill Cheryl Turner's position due to her retirement and become the assistant director of special education. Jacob Cogran will be moving from the AP at the West Clermont High School to a supervisor of special education at the middle school. We also have the proposed transfer and reassignment of 3 cafe workers, 2 paraprofessional aides. We have the proposed approval for supplemental contracts for spring coaches, study tables, home tutors, resident educator mentor. This agenda also includes a resolution to terminate a cafeteria worker per the terms of the HOPE contract master agreement. Included in this agenda are requests for unpaid leaves of absences, the hiring of classified substitutes, multiple school volunteer and student teachers. And finally, we have the proposed stipend list approval for teachers working in the extended learning program, student-centered learning ecosystem, winter guard support, band support, middle school unit redesign, middle school schedule redesign, and mentoring. This concludes the review of the personnel agenda submission for your consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, Ellie has some field trip requests, several.
Good evening. Before you tonight, you'll find 5 overnight field trip requests for your approval. 3 of those are to Camp Campbellgard for Clough Pike Elementary, Withamsville, Tabasco, and Summerside Elementary. The other 2 are for the HOSA International Conference in Nashville, Tennessee, and the BPA National Leadership Conference in Dallas, Texas. We're very excited about these opportunities for students, and for the international conferences and the leadership conference, students have earned the right through previous participation and qualifying to be able to attend those conferences. Thank you.
Yep. Item 7.07 is the approval of minutes. We have 2 approvals this evening. One is 7.07, which is for the February 22nd board meeting. Item 7.08 is a request for approval of minutes for the March 7th regular meeting, the work session that we had. Item 7.09 are the donations that we have received. There are 4 of those. I will read them. The first is from the Clermont Chamber of Commerce Foundation. They donated $250 for sponsorship of the West Clermont High School Job Fair on March 4th. Jim Johnston donated $500 to West Clermont High School Theater Department in memory of Donna Johnston. The third is the U.S. Department of Education donated $10 for completing a survey to West Clermont High School principal account. The fourth is the Peterman Bus Company. They sponsored the Partner in Education luncheon that we had. Item 7.10 is the benefit plan document and summary plan description. The recommendation to approve that plan document and the summary plan description as presented. That is for our section 125. As we go back and check things periodically, we wanted to make sure that those documents were approved at some point. We go back to 2006, I believe it was, and so we're restating that adoption as of January 1, 2022 going forward. Item 7.11 is the accepting amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission. This is an annual resolution that we request the board to adopt. It is a requirement that's pursuant to the tax budget within this county. The tax budget is not required. In lieu of that, we do file twice a year the 5-year forecast, which outlines our budget plus our forecast for the 4 years beyond that. So it's the recommendation to approve the resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. Side note too is we do a dual confirmation and we also double check those rates and those amounts to make sure that they equal what we calculate too. So county auditor runs those by the State Department of Taxation. They in turn submit those to us. We proof those, and then we ask this resolution to be approved. Item 7.12 is the financial statements, bills paid, lists, and investments. Those are for the month of February. And so the consent agenda goes from is item 7, that is item 7.01, through item 7.12, as requested by the superintendent, treasurer, and the cabinet.
I've heard the recommendation. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Mr. Chumley, in a second.
We'll second it.
Mr. Patton, any discussion? Okay, Mr. Romano?
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Yes.
5 yes. Thank you.
Okay,
Eric's presentation.
8.01, superintendent's business.
Yeah, Mr. Eric Dole is going to come forward tonight to give an overview of our Whole Child Network presentation. It encompasses all the work that he's responsible for, and as it's growing and expanding, we think it'll give you a good sense of all the great work that is already happening in the district and what's on the horizon. Because some of this stuff, it's items that sometimes it's not so visible. So we want to make something that is extremely hard work behind the scenes more visible tonight. So, Eric.
Good evening again. It's my pleasure to be able to speak with you this evening with regards to what we are calling our Whole Child Network here in West Clermont Local Schools. It's really a pleasure for me as this speaks to the embodiment of everything that I think I've done as a professional for the last 25 years. So it's exciting for me to be able to put that experience to work for the students here in this district and to work with the great team members that we have in our schools and in our community to do so. So what do we mean by the Whole Child Network? What we're going to talk about is what is the purpose of the work that we do. Threefold, everything that we can think of to allow students in our district to have access to education, to learning, to be able to participate in that process, and then ultimately to show growth, to show progress in learning that we engaged in. That's the first tenet of why we do what we do. Next, we know that we have been charged as a community with trying to prepare students for everything that they need to be able to know and do as they graduate from high school and move on to the world of work. So that's embodied within our Portrait of a Graduate, and we know that the skills that are required of students go beyond just the academic knowledge that we impart upon them. It includes things such as collaboration, innovation, resiliency. Those are skills that we have to be able to teach them through the experiences that we offer to them. So because of those two charges, access, participation, and progress, and then preparation for post-secondary life, we have developed our Whole Child Network to assure that we can wrap everything we can around students to be able to get them to that end. This includes not just the partnerships we engage in with our communities, but then also how we utilize the resources that we have available within our schools to do that work. I forgot to say at the beginning, if you have questions, comments that you would like along the way, please feel free to do that. I like to engage a little bit, as we learn about things. Ohio has recognized the need for us as communities to begin to think more globally about the supports that we provide to students because of the challenges that we have seen historically that students are faced with that prevent them from accessing and participating and progressing at school. Ohio has determined that they'll call this their Whole Child Network or Whole Child Framework. That's really the framework that we're adopting and then demonstrating how we're implementing that at our local level. So through our presentation here this evening, we'll break this apart and we'll show you, here are the things that we're engaged in, here are some of the changes that we are making and will need to make, and how we are engaging our community in doing that work. Basically, the main tenet of why we engage in this is that we know that basic psychological and physiological needs must be met before students are able to engage in higher order thinking, higher order learning, to engage in complex social activities. So we have to keep that in mind with the diversity of students that we have, that not everybody is coming to the table with the same set of experiences or the same set of resources, or students are coming to us with other precipitating factors that in some way are preventing them from accessing and participating and progressing at school. Whether that be some sort of disability that they might have, whether that be poverty and the impact that that's had upon their life, whether that be their exposure to traumatic events such as abuse, neglect, or other types of things. We know we have a diverse array of students who come to us. We have to assure that they overcome some of the barriers to their education in order to be able to engage in learning at school. We also know that to do a good job, we have to pay attention to our systemic practices. We have to look at the ways in which we're doing business so that we can efficiently meet student needs along the way. Looking at not just our policies, our processes, and our practices, but then also how we are being responsive to the individual needs that present themselves to us, as well as group needs that might be unique to the populations that we're serving. So let's take a look at some of the components of what it is that we're referencing as our Whole Child Network. What are those things that we are doing along the way? First and foremost, we have a focus on healthy behaviors. These are the knowledge and skills that will allow students to be socially adjusted, to have the skills to engage with one another, and ultimately to have the skills to be able to have a job and engage productively with their community. How do we do that in a public school setting? PE and health education do offer a lot of opportunity to engage in that type of learning environment. Our athletics and extracurricular activities build upon that. But then we also have some explicit instruction that we engage in with our students to help teach them as a group the skills that we want them to be able to demonstrate at school, at home, in the community, and ultimately at home or in work. Caring School Community. This is our social skills curriculum that we have kindergarten through 6th grade or 8th grade in our district. Zones of regulation. Pack time at our high school. So what are those skills that we're focusing on with our high school students that they've identified as needs and that their teachers have also identified as potential needs for them? For example, executive functioning skills, ability to organize, ability to stay on task, ability to prioritize. Those are some of the types of skills that we teach in pack time at the high school. Signs of suicide, a curriculum that we utilize to help meet some of our state requirements for informing students about risk factors and how to identify when they need help or when their peers might need help. Small group social skills, and then at our high school and middle school, our link crew and our web programs to help students with those transitions from elementary to middle school to be successful, and then from middle school to high school. We also provide a lot of direct services to students. These services are often tiered in nature in that we've identified students who have some needs beyond just those that we can meet with the regular curriculum that we offer. But they also can be tailored to the student body as a whole. So for example, school and child nutrition, obviously we provide nutritional services to everybody. Health services and behavioral health services. So we have access to our health clinics, which is a more of a universal service that we provide, but then we can also break that down into those students that we might refer for either some physical health need or some behavioral health need that they might have. What does that look like? As I stated, we have our school nurses and health aides that provide an amazing resource for our students. We have our partnership with Health Source of Ohio, our Wolves Wellness Center, our partnership with Mercy Healthplex, and then behaviorally, our school counselors and school psychologists, our behavioral coaches in the district to assist teams with identifying why students might be engaged in behaviors that they're engaging in and what we can do to help intervene and even to prevent some of those behaviors from occurring. And then our partnership with Child Focus. This includes both preventative services and case management services. You might have heard something referred to as our qualified mental health specialists in each building, but then also therapists and medication management, which is a higher level of need, often supported through Medicaid or private health insurance.
I would say this slide, this content on this slide is probably where we spend a ton of our time, problem
Absolutely.
solving. On the board, you know, we've added counselors, we've added school psychologists. The ratio between students and each of those is still very high.
Correct.
And the industry of behavioral health, whether it's the coaches or members from Child Focus, we're still at a place where their industry is short staff.
Yes.
And so our ability to, we are able to get their resources here. Like we only really pay for one Child Focus person. They supplement the rest through our work with them. But the ability to keep consistent people in place and working with the principals, with the staff is very, very challenging. And it's only getting more complex. The need's getting higher and the number of them feel like it's a challenge.
Yes, just with education, mental health and community services are facing staffing shortages due to burnout, the emotional toll that it's taking, and sometimes pay not being the best as it could be for social services. So we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go into our presentation about some of the challenges that we face in partnering with some of our community agencies and with staffing our own services, and what opportunities that does provide for us for improving those services as we move forward. You know, for example, knowing that we have a higher level of mental health need now than we've seen in a very long time, and knowing that we're challenged with prevention and case management, those QMHS professionals from being able to meet that need, we have to partner with Child Focus and our other community agencies in a different way to find processes where we can have referral systems that will support having therapists in buildings. And that's aside from them being able to find the therapist even to be with us. So it's a funding issue on the mental health side that's outside of the realm of school-based funding, but part of the reality that we face when partnering to provide a medical service per se. Engaging others. So how are those ways in which we are engaging our community service providers and our families? We know that families have a lot to offer in terms of understanding their children and their needs, but are we always listening to them, partnering with them in the ways that we should in order to overcome the challenges that they're facing? Or have we created processes and systems that allow them to overcome their fear of engaging with an agency in order to get the help that they might need? One thing that the district should be extremely proud of is the work of our central office team in trying to improve our customer service, the way in which we're engaging with the families and others who call in to us. That's called our EPIC support model, building upon The Power of Moments, which is a book that a lot of our clerical support and central office support team is reading at the moment, as well as our health clinic aides, because they're frontline in trying to engage in those conversations with families. And as we'll talk about here toward the end of our presentation, how are we building those community partnerships and maximizing the ways in which we can utilize their expertise, their resources to help us do the work that we need to do. And then finally, the last component to the services that we provide, what is it that we do to create safe and supportive school environments? Knowing that students learn best and thrive, not only when they feel safe, but when they are emotionally well. There is a plethora of things that we do in schools and here in West Clermont to be able to say, yes, we are focusing on safety, we are focusing on student well-being, and then also staff well-being as a part of that. Positive behavior interventions and supports. I'm sure you've heard PBIS as an acronym. There's probably been many presentations about what we mean by that, but in essence, how do we identify what are those things that we wish to see students do in terms of behaviors and how they engage with each other and ourselves? How do we teach that to them? How do we reinforce that? How do we build school climates that are welcoming and supportive of students so that they want to come to school and they want to remain engaged with the learning process? Our partnership with Union Township and Clermont County Sheriff for our school resource officers has been a critical component to what we do to assure not only school safety, but how do we engage those SROs as part of building relationships with students, engaging them so that they feel valued and connected with the school as a whole, but then also beyond our school walls, seeing somebody familiar out in the community. That's a critical piece that we have in place. ALICE training, what do we do when there's an active incident that we need to respond to? Nonviolent crisis intervention. This is our model for how to verbally de-escalate situations so that we can avoid physical confrontation when we need to with students, with families, whoever. These are some critical communication skills that we teach our staff so that they know how to engage in the face of conflict. Threat assessment, you've heard of Sandy Hook. This is our process that we go through when a student makes a threat so that we can determine, is this a transient threat, something that is not substantive, that we still need to address and take seriously, but we have little fear that it will become something that is acted upon versus a substantive threat. Those threats that we know we must act immediately and expeditiously to mitigate that from happening. Suicide risk assessment, how are we ourselves engaging in identifying to what degree a student's suicidal ideation might need immediate intervention or other types of support. And then we do partner with Child Focus and the Mobile Crisis Unit for parts of that as well. Hope Squad that you're familiar with, our peer model for identifying students at risk and connecting them with help. Our traumatic event crisis intervention planning process. So how do we go in after a crisis has occurred to meet the emotional needs of that school community? And then finally, our anonymous reporting system on our district website, as well as through the Safer Ohio School tip line. So if you're a student, if you're a family member who has a concern about bullying or something that is threatening that you want to have addressed, you can make a report without fear of retaliation or anything along those lines. Before we go any further, questions or comments? Is this enlightening?
Is that model Is it called the Sandy Hook? Like, is it called the Sandy Hook model?
Many people refer to it as Sandy Hook, but we actually utilize a model developed in Virginia through the universities in the state that Sandy Hook has adopted and does training nationwide for. A group of our school teams just went through a refresher training with me on that, and we do plan to do refreshers on that and some other parts of our model this summer with them. Okay. And then finally, as we talked about, all of these things that we've done mean nothing if we don't pay attention to the ways in which we're engaging our families and engaging our community partners to do the work that we need to do. We can't do it alone. We've recently, as you have been in discussions about, have seen an increase in students making bad choices in terms of the language that they use. It's not only about what we do to help teach them different ways to resolve conflict, but it's about how our families are also engaging in that work. It's about how our community providers are helping us engage in that work. So there's a lot before us that we need to do to build the supports that we need, not only as a school, but as a community, if that makes sense. So where have our efforts been focused and where are we going now? How are we making the whole child network come more to life than it already is? Or how are we reevaluating the systemic things that we need to do as a school district, as well as building better partnerships with our community to get better results at the end of the day? Again, to assure that students can access, participate, and progress at school, but then also to assure that we can make our portrait of a graduate come to life, to give them those critical, essential skills that they need to succeed. Well, we've been strengthening processes for how we connect students experiencing different life circumstances, whether that be foster care or homelessness, or whether they need resources to help with clothing or food or mental health supports. How are we engaging families to be able to connect to the services that we're offering? One that we've been focused on this year, and I know that Mr. Overby and teams have spent a long time trying to problem solve, is overcoming that resistance to working with agencies. So how to connect our families to our Health Source of Ohio partnership. We have this amazing school resource that very few students are actively using. How do we build trust and relationships to get them there? Investment in additional school psychologists at the elementary level and school counselors at the middle and high school levels. Good start. We might have more to do. I guess it'll depend on what our system needs end up being over time. Strengthening of our technology and data tools to identify student needs. This has been a banner year in the district for trying to find ways to measure the things that we're talking about and to be able to present that data so that ultimately we can look at how are we monitoring things in a formative way, frequently over time, but then are we making a substantive difference at the end of the day? What is our summative outcome? We're starting to find ways to measure things now through Performance Matters, Unified Insights, and exploration of other tools that are at our disposal. For example, we have a pilot happening now with our innovative school model to look at Performance 21. And this is a way to tap into some of those positive student attributes like resiliency, which is critical, how students feel about being connected to school, but it's also in line with our portrait of a graduate. Patel for Kids helps to look at how to draw connections between those outcomes. Strengthening of teaming and collaborative problem solving to identify reasons for needs of support. We've got lots of great resources here, but are they working together in the right ways? Are we sitting down at the table to bring the different viewpoints to bear upon an individual student and the reasons for the challenge that they're facing, whether that be attendance, whether that be behavior, whether that be some academic challenge that they're facing. Do we do that? Do we do it in the right way? Do we do it frequently enough? Those are systemic challenges that we have to find ways through. Professional development, to increase our knowledge and skills to be able to do some of the work that we're talking about. I had the pleasure to take a group from schools fairly recently to do an online training through Attendance Works, which is a national clearinghouse for research-based prevention and intervention to get students to school. How can we utilize that knowledge and skill in addition to reframing how we team to better meet our attendance needs? Identification of supports and services that might be missing as we explore solutions. Engage Ohio, it's a free resource that has just been promoted by the state to provide academic assistance coaches to students who are challenged with coming to school, timely, but then also some students who are experiencing some other academic type challenges. So how can we utilize that in connection with our teaming and problem-solving process to connect students with that resource? But the night skills. Excuse me. We have our Caring School Communities curriculum, but does it meet all of our need in terms of some of the social skills that we have to teach? For example, Botfin Light Skills is a free resource to us that could better target prevention for drug and alcohol use and abuse, or students who might be experiencing violence in their lives, how they would be able to overcome some of that and look for help.
Is that a state resource?
It's supported by the state. It's also supported through the Greater Cincinnati Behavioral Health group in Clermont County, Coalition for Drug-Free Clermont County.
And what, you guys noticed that we've been working with time, both at the high school and the middle school, and we'll be working in the elementary in the future, trying to address where all these things can take place. Because everything, you're tug of war with core academics, plus needing to balance addressing these issues. And we're always just kind of fighting for time, and where does it make sense? Who should be delivering? And so like, those are challenges that we have to overcome as we work through all this. But time matters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ultimately, if we do this well, students will be more engaged and do better academically and socially. We also are engaged in meeting with those stakeholder groups to hear from them the positive attributes of what we're doing, as well as what they see as some of the challenges that we're faced with and how they might be able to help us with some of those challenges. Ms. Adams and I have had a number of those community meetings, but we also meet with them in other ways throughout the school year. And then expansion of our partnerships. We talked about child-focused. We this year have a therapist that we were able to have assigned to our special education units, which was a huge help for the social emotional needs that that group of students is experiencing. We're, as we talked about, looking at ways of improving our referral models to be able to access some of those more intensive services for students, as well as potential support for our skills building. So in what ways can we utilize our qualified mental health specialists to run small student groups around specific needs? You know, for example, running a divorce group for students who are experiencing challenges from divorce, who might need some of those skills in order to stay more engaged at school. Health Source of Ohio, we talked about improving the relationship with families and improving the referral process so that we can engage more students with that resource. Another really exciting avenue that we're pursuing is mobile vision, to be able to come to us next year, hopefully. This year we have mobile dental going to the schools. We've had that for a little while now. Hopefully next year we'll have mobile vision as well to the school buildings. We do have both of them as well at the Wolves Wellness Center at any time, but to get them out to the community where families are is really priceless. As we talked about, the Greater Cincinnati Behavioral Health and Coalition for Drug-Free Clermont County support for our Caring School Communities curriculum. They, with Mr. Overby and others, initially funded our adoption of that curriculum and the training that went into our teachers and school staff being able to implement that. They're willing to help us assure that we're doing that with fidelity and potentially training for the new staff that have come on board since its implementation. And then also to look at that life skills curriculum that might meet some of the needs that are missing from our current social skills. Expanding our Boys and Girls Club partnership to additional buildings. Media's Kids of All and how we're utilizing some of those resources. People working cooperatively. We have a free community resource to help with weatherization. So if you're spending a lot of money trying to heat your home, there's an agency that can come in and help you weatherize your home to cut costs so that you can have funds available to do what you need to do to meet some of those basic needs. Again, going back to the psychological and physiological needs that families have to overcome so that they can focus on school. Presley Ridge, improving knowledge of this resource, but then also the ways in which we're connecting students with it. This is sort of a more intensive level of case management than Child Focus would offer. So students that have significant mental health needs, behavioral challenges. It also comes with a really excellent funding source so that families that don't have funds won't be turned away. It's free for those that utilize it. Prevention First, some additional support for skills building. And then finally, all of the various agencies that we engage with for support for food and clothing. Cincy Kids for Kids, Crossroads, GLAM, Live Like a Mother, Interparish Ministry, and then the various agencies that are involved with each of our school buildings individually. So we have these incredible community partnerships that are willing to do the things that we need. We just have to find ways to connect them to those needs and better work through those processes.
Is there a place on our website, or is there a specific person, if we have families or community members that would need to utilize one of these resources, that they could go out and find this information?
We are looking at how to utilize our website to do that in a better way. There is a lot of this information there, but it's not currently in the most usable form. So I do know that Mr. Ryle and others are helping work with us. Shout out to Mr. Ryle in the back.
It's on the hub for now, like that's where it is.
So
He's-
it's on the Wolfpack Hub?
Yep,
Okay,
on the hub.
okay. Because I think, part of the battle of engaging and getting people to utilize these resources is, number one, knowing where to go find it,
Yes.
and to do it kind of anonymously until you're steady on your feet, and it's hard to ask for help.
Yeah.
It is.
And I'm in 3 organizations right now with Lead Clermont and Family and Children First, and this conversation is happening in almost in every setting I go in Clermont County right now. The Safety Net Alliance, trying to figure out how you connect. The Safety Net Alliance is probably the supreme example of how you connect people with resources. They do quite well. And we're just trying to learn from them and know that this is truly a community problem, that it's really been highlighted since COVID in new ways.
Yeah. Our goal would be to take this massive need, because as you've seen, what we're talking about is quite expansive, and making it manageable. Teaching not only our school teams how to utilize the resources and processes that we have, but then also having them help families ultimately be able to do this as well. Yeah. Other questions? Does it make a little bit more sense now? More tangible?
Eric, you passed the little rookie test of having the first presentation with all the screens going on and off during the presentation. You
It's all
handled
right.
that well.
It keeps me engaged.
Your initiation that the cabinet set up for you. No, I'm just kidding. We are very blessed to have Eric Duell in our district. He has a wealth of knowledge. He's very connected, And, because I think what's interesting about this role is it's nuanced. There's so many pieces to it. It's not a one-man show. It involves lots and lots of people, but the coordination of it really takes a strong set of, systems mindedness. And then that's what you bring and can help us just to grow like what knowledge you have throughout our organization. Because our kids need us more than ever to figure out how to wrap around in these ways in an effective, efficient way so that we can keep the main thing, which
Absolutely.
is our core academics.
I will be successful if I facilitate and build others' capacities to do the work. Ultimately, that's where we need to be. I also like being the ombudsman to some degree and helping to problem solve some of the concerns that schools or families come up with, because that gives us opportunity to show them the path to the resources that they need.
Well, and one of the challenges that Eric and I have been talking to our partners about is, so yes, you can go to our website and you can scroll through and you can find some things. And yes, your counselor can maybe tell you some things, or you're a teacher, whatever. What we do in our district is pretty phenomenal. There's a lot of things, but I still think it's like a best kept secret. And so, because some of this, it's not like, I don't know, you make posters of this, or you like, I don't know, make it, I know we could probably do some more videos, but I think that's what we're challenged with, is making sure that the things that we are doing is getting out into the world and people are understanding them better than they are now. And I just think it's a huge challenge, because it's one of those things, like, you don't really need to know about dental until you need a dental thing. And so it's like, it's the timeliness of it and the relevancy and cutting down those barriers just to having the information. That was still a huge challenge.
It's also important to keep in mind that every situation is unique. What works for one student won't work for the next, or what works for one family won't work for the next. So it's being aware of the variety of resources that you have, and then finding which one is the solution for you at that moment in time.
And along those same lines, what we did for our students 5 or 10 years ago is nowhere near the needs of what the students are today.
Yes.
And the resources that are required to keep them safe, to keep them engaged, to keep them, all of that. And so I know that takes a lot of talent, a lot of people, where 5 or maybe even 10 years ago, it was just a scratch on the surface of what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Eric.
Thank you.
The final thing I have for tonight, Dan's going to pull up, is just a reminder of our engagement plan, our timeline. Jeffrey worked on it, so it's all on one screen now. By the end of this week, we'll be launching our first survey that is designed to get just an initial smattering of information from our stakeholders to find out what matters most to them in those areas of topic that we've talked about: facilities, transportation, educational programming, mental health and wellness, and kind of the design of school and what matters most to people. Our town hall is about a month away from today, and at this time we have less than 20 people signed up, and so we're going to continue to push this really heavily, because if a town hall, like large group setting, maybe isn't best for you, then we're going to open up opportunities for small group and one-on-one opportunities between now and next year as well. And this year, the first opportunity is at Holly Hill at 7 o'clock on April 21st. It's an RSVP because we need to limit it to 100 people, and we will be streaming that event live. And then May 3rd, the town hall will be at Willowville Elementary. We haven't set an exact cap on that yet, but it'll be at least 100 people at the Willowville event as well. Those will be identical events, so you don't have to go to every single one of them. You can maybe just go with like what's the most convenient date or location for you. And as time progresses, we'll just be bringing updates back to you guys as a board. And we're actually meeting, I skipped this one because I was going down the page. Mr. Gephardt and I and Mrs. Lawson will be meeting tomorrow to talk more about the student town hall, because we're going to be doing this to get student voice with the high school students this spring. So those are some things going on. Just want to make sure everyone is aware of it. And Mr. Overby, I know I'm going to mess up this date. The date of the fun run, April 23rd? April 23rd is the fun run, hosted by the West Clermont Education Foundation. That's going to be at the West Clermont High School track. And we're very excited to be bringing back a face-to-face event. We're thrilled to be able to support the foundation. They are a small but mighty group who is so committed to West Clermont, and they are looking for ways to incorporate and include more alumni and getting them more involved so that they feel connected here in West Clermont. So we're excited about that event. There's a bit of a competition between all the schools to see who can get the most people out. So game on to all of the building administrators to get those numbers up as much as possible. And that's it. You guys have any questions for me? That's it.
Okay. Treasurer's comments 9.01.
There we go. Just two items briefly this evening. First, again, I try and every month just give you a little synopsis of what's been going on in the finances. And then second, just want to do a little brief update with the budget development schedule, because we've had an administrative team that was hard at work this past month and a half, putting some things together for that. So, let me... Nancy?
You need a clicker?
Let's do it this way.
Well, the clicker, bless you.
There we go. Okay. So there's a report that we provide to the board every month, and that's a comparison of the current month's actual revenues and expenses, and how does that compare to the 5-year forecast, the most recent one that was adopted November of '21. On the revenue side, February is always a good month for us because, as the community knows, the real estate taxes go out in January. There's a pretty good collection that takes place in February and March. February, we get a pretty sizable advance to us. You'll see that we are at, on the local tax side, we received $45 million of the $51 million that was expected. That's from July 1 through February 28th. We did, late last week, receive our first half settlement. So we'll be reconciling that with the projection that was there, so we'll know soon how on track we are with that, but all indications are that we are on track with that. The item that's related to that is the abatement that really comes from the tax exemptions. So we project about 1.9 million on that. We did receive the first half settlement on that, and we are due in March and April in April and May, the reimbursements for that, the TIF settlements from Union Township and Pierce Township. So those are on track too that we're going to see. The state foundation and the state tax reimbursements. The state foundation, as you'll recall, the funding did change for this school year. We are on track. The estimate does reflect November when we did the forecast. We did not have the new calculations to the full extent. But when we take our almost $20 million that we received through February 28th, we're actually a little bit ahead of the game with the foundation payments. The state tax reimbursements, those are the homestead and rollback settlements that we get. We will receive that probably in May, so we're pretty much on track with that. So all in all, with our revenue, the message is we're on track. If something pops up that seems like we're going to be off track with that, I would let you know. On the expenditure side, same message is there too, that we're on track. As you know, our wages and benefits are the primary line items of our budget. We're a people-intense organization. So if you look at spreading the salary and benefits across the 8 months from July through February, it's about 67%. And so far to date, we've expended of the estimate for that forecast, 65% in both the wages and benefits line items. We're right on track with that, to do that. Those are the big items. The purchase services, supplies, and equipment seems heavy, that we expended more, but take into account most of that is done Early in the year and kind of in May and June, those are kind of slow months for that. I don't want to say we're ahead of schedule with some things, but I know Mr. LaFada, Mr. Meyer have been working on what needs to be done this summer as far as facilities. So you know that we're on track with that. That's not all in the general fund, that's also in the permanent improvement fund. But they've identified those, and we're on track with seeing that. So revenue side, expenditure side, we're right where we should be with that. I don't foresee any items that would throw us off base for this fiscal year to do that. Second item that I wanted to discuss, does anybody have any questions on the finances through February? Okay. As you know, there's kind of a timeline that before June 30th, the board either adopts an annual appropriation measure for FY23 or they adopt a temporary appropriation measure. So from today to how do we get there, you know, before June 30th with that? So during the month of March, the district leadership team really came together and put together packages, budget packages for us to review. In the past, that was not done this way. We're really looking at building a budget kind of from the ground floor. They did their budget submission so that they looked at 4 different levels. What's required or what's mandatory, i.e. what does law say we have to do, or what are some compliance issues from certain things, or what did we agree to do based on the collective bargaining agreements. There's a supportive section to that. For example, at my budget center, in the mandatory level, the only thing that's really required is that the board hire a treasurer. Okay, that's in the mandatory. There's really nothing else with that. In the supportive level, what are the tools and resources that allow one to do that job with that? The continuation level is kind of looking back a little bit and saying, okay, if we were at a level in the past, what does that look like? And probably what's kind of new this year is that improvement level, or what are some of the things that as the people that manage the departments, that manage the resources, what are some things that they would like to have that could improve, make things more efficient, make things more effective? As those get submitted, we kind of put those into different packages, but I think the important thing is the review of those packages from the ground floor up. So, you know, there may be some things that we look at that we may not need to continue. Okay, there may be some improvement levels that say these are going to be better for kids than some things that we've been doing to do that. So that analysis will be done. All of it really gets put in line with what is our go-forward strategy, what's the plan. It's great that this district has a plan. You know, I've been in some districts where they look at the finances first and then figure out how to spend the money. In this district, it's great that the board with the superintendent and the community put together a plan. They know where they want to go. So now how do we fund that plan to go forward, which is important. So in the other additional thing that's a little bit different is when we do the budget, in the past it's always been just done for 1 year. So the challenge that the leadership team really took on in their departments is, how do I look beyond just 1 year of FY23, July 1 of 22 through June 30th of 23? What do things look like if we look in FY24, if we look in FY25 and 26? How do we look when we continue the program? The important part of that is when we commit to something in FY23, we commit to it with the intention that it's going to be sustainable, that we're not going to look at 24 and 25 and say, okay, what do we take out of the budget? So if we're going to add something to it, if we're going to expend our funds, what is sustainable with that? So, you know, I asked that the leadership team put that together. They did a great job of putting that together. It's the first year that we've done that, so it's not going to be perfect, okay? But as time goes on, we have a solid 1-year budget. We have a solid 3-year spending plan that as we move forward, we can adjust with it to do that. So why is that important to someone that sits in my chair? You know, in the past, the 5-year forecast, we look at the first year or so going forward. What really happens when the leadership team can put that spending plan together on a line item basis, that spending plan then rolls up to the 5-year forecast. So there's detail now a little bit greater detail behind that forecast, rather than the treasurer putting percentage adders onto it or making schedules with it. The people who manage the work and manage the budgets also help provide the forecast of where we're going with it. So I, for one, am pretty excited about having that happen. So April, we'll refine things a little bit more, prioritize things on a multi-year plan. In May, we come back with the required 5-year forecast that's going to be reflective of the budget and of that spending plan. And we'll present that to the board in May. And then in June, we adopt the annual appropriation measure to go forward. Telling you this now because the involvement with that finances will increase more in May. So as we put more things together, we'll submit that to the board for their review too. Keep in mind that, all the work that's done gets funneled through one person, okay? That's not me. I help put it together, but it's the superintendent's recommendation that's the budget and that go-forward plan with that. And so everything that the team puts together, that I try and assemble, that's reflective of that, is really guided by the superintendent, then submitted to the board for the request for approval of that budget and that spending plan to do that. So kind of gearing up for that. I'm excited that we're looking at a new way to do it. And compliments go out to the administrative team for going along with that ride and doing the work behind the scenes to get it done. So, any questions on that? Good. Thank you.
Okay, board business, board comments? Mrs. Brady?
A couple of reminders. Friday night is the How at the Moon event to support the student athletes at the high school. Tuesday evening, mark your calendars, is the spring session of Meet the Team Night. Festivities start at 6 p.m. For those that are counting, the seniors have 28 days left of high school. 23 hours. We can get it down to the minute if we need to. I hear it every day. I'm really pleased that the senior class has decided to continue the Adopt a Senior program. And for those that aren't aware of what that is, a couple years ago when COVID shut down all of the crescendo to graduation, they put together a program that allowed our community and families to adopt a senior. And then by picking a child, dropping off a little gift basket, it made them feel very special. So they've continued that again this year. Anybody who's interested can go out to Facebook and look at it. It's West Clermont 2022 Adopt a Senior program. And we welcome anybody who would like to participate in that. That's all the updates I have.
Mr. Chumley?
I agree with what you said earlier, that we don't celebrate enough, we don't recognize enough, so I want to thank and congratulate everyone that we did today. You won't hear me talking about our Reds this season. They're breaking my heart. But I will say who did.
Okay, Mr. Patton?
I too would just like to compliment everyone today that we recognized they do a great job. Some of the individuals in the maintenance department, I've actually had the privilege to working with them. So I do agree that they are top notch. So that's all I got.
Ms. Delaney?
Celebration again for our all of our people of the hour this evening. I've always said our maintenance and custodial staff have been amazing when I was a parent here in the district, because my children played travel sports, so we were going to different schools, gymnasiums, and all these different things. And 20 years ago when my kids started playing sports, our buildings were old, and our buildings were always, I never questioned the cleanliness of our buildings. We had 50-plus-year-old buildings, and they looked brand new. So I appreciate the effort and the pride that our staff puts into making our facilities wonderful for our students, our staff, and our community. Best wishes to our retirees that were announced this evening. I just did a little quick math. There's over 100 years of service experience that's going to be retiring in the next few weeks, so that's kind of monumental. Personal shout out to Mr. Jutzi. I've known him for a very long time, and he was a basketball coach in the Glen Estee days and then came back the last few years to help at West Clermont High School. So good luck to all of them, and look forward to the rest of the year.
I would also like to congratulate the retirees. I happen to know all 5 of them. And Mr. Jetsi is going to be joining me at Bethel. He was approved this last week, I believe, for a job there. I look forward to working with him again. And I really want to give a big recognition to Susan Greisel, who has done amazing things with the restaurant program. Do they still have that now? Yes. She's wonderful. I worked with her years ago, and she's just a wonderful person. Okay.
Yeah, they're serving in person now. They've gotten back.
I used to enjoy that when I was in the building. Okay. Anything else? All right, looking for a motion to adjourn?
Oh, we have to go into
Well,
executive session.
yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's a recommendation to withdraw to executive session for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, compensation of or investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, and to consider the sale of property at competitive bidding, and to consider matters required to keep confidential by federal law or regulations or state statutes, and to discuss details relative to the security arrangements and emergency response protocols for the Board of Education. We do not anticipate action, correct? Okay. Thank you all for attending, and have a good evening.
Oh, we need a motion.
Oh, motion.
So moved.
Sorry.
So moved.
Jumping ahead here.
Okay.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to go into executive session.
Mrs. Brinkman did that. Now we need a second.
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 Mrs. Delaney,
Second?
Delaney.
any discussion? Okay. Mr.
Roll
Romano?
call. Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yeah.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
5 yes.
Now, thank you all for attending, and have a great evening.